So let's do this exercise. It is about how to find the smallest positive integer in a given array. So let's get started. First of all, we start Visual Studio. I go on to create new project, console app.NET Core. I will give it a name. Let's call it find smallest positive integer. Create. And as usual, Visual Code will provide us with a sample Hello World application. We just have to add here our, in this case, we're going to add link code as a header or namespace, and I'm going to create a class which I will call solution. Inside this class, I will define okay, let's do this first. Let's define first the array. The array which will contain the values from which I want to test, which is the smallest positive missing integer. So let's populate this array with numbers. Let's put a 0 up in the index 0, 1 and 2. Let's put in values like, for instance, 3 and 5. So by this sequence we can know that the missing smallest positive integer is the 2. Okay, knowing that, now I can create then my function which will return an integer. Let's call it field, let's call it the smallest. Let's call it like that, the smallest. And this will take in an array as an input. It's clear like that. So the first thing that I have to check is whether the number 1 doesn't exist, because if number 1 doesn't exist, that means that number 1 is the smallest missing positive integer. So the way we do that is with an if statement, and in that if statement I just have to say if A contains number 1, it's true, but I want to know whether it doesn't contain. So if it doesn't contain number 1, then I return 1. Else I'm going to start by defining the variable, and in that variable we'll set the maximum number or the maximum integer that we have right now. It should be the 5. So I say max, the maximum integer of this array is the number 5. So we start by defining this variable, and the next thing I do, I will implement a for each loop. There must be other more efficient way to do this, but that's how I figured out. So I'll then loop through the whole array, and then we start by var, let's call this num in A. So for each one I need to check whether Whether first of all I have to check whether the number is a positive integer. So the way to check that is testing whether this num is bigger than 0, and I will also check if number is smaller or equal than the result. If all that is true, I can go ahead inside this if statement and do another check. This check will test whether the next number, so number, exists or not inside of the array. The way to do that is taking the array itself, and with the contains function, I will check whether num plus 1, meaning the next one, exists. If it exists, I will do something, but I want what I'm looking is for the missing one, so I have to negate this statement, meaning that if I enter into the 1, it checks for the 2. If the 2 doesn't exist, then it will assign the value to the variable result. And the way we do that is setting num plus 1. So we have 1 if, 2 if, and that's pretty much it. Once we are done with the for each loop, we can get here and return the result. Now what's left to be done is the initialization of this class and the invocation of the function. So our class is called solution, new solution, and we are going to print on the console as the smallest, which is my function here, and I will pass the array to the function. Save, compile, and run the code. See what happens. It's running, and there we go. 2 is the result. Let's assume that the number 1 is missing. Then it returns the 1. Let's assume that number 1 is there, 3 is there, but 2 is also there, but 4 is missing, 3 is missing. 3 should be the missing positive integer. There you go.